My name is Clara. I'm 25 years old, and I'm still learning how to live. But this story isn't just about life. It's about money and how it slowly taught me who I really am. Not the kind of money you see in big bank accounts or fancy wallets, but the small bills that disappear faster than you expect. The coins you count twice, the regret of a bad purchase, the silence of an empty fridge. For years, I thought money was the enemy, or worse, a friend who never stayed. I grew up in a small town called Dunlow, a quiet place with quiet people. My parents worked hard, my father as a mechanic, my mother as a receptionist at a small clinic. They were gentle, tired souls who gave me everything they could. But we didn't talk about money, ever. It was like some kind of invisible weight that everyone carried, but no one named. I remember once, when I was maybe 11, I asked Mom why she never bought strawberries, even when they were on sale. She just smiled and said, "Not this week, honey. Maybe next time." There was never a next time. As a child, you don't understand. You just feel. And what I felt was this: money made people tired. It made my dad rub his temples at the kitchen table. It made my mom stay quiet in the car after grocery shopping. It made school field trips awkward because I always brought homemade sandwiches when the other kids bought lunch. But they loved me deeply, fiercely, quietly. So I learned to smile, to not ask for things, to say I'm fine, even when I wasn't, and to believe that needing money was something a good girl didn't do. That belief followed me like a shadow. When I turned 18, I got my first job at a local diner. The tips weren't great, but I liked having my own money, even if it disappeared quickly. I used it to buy second-hand books, cheap makeup, and the occasional caramel coffee that made me feel more adult than I actually was. But I never saved. Saving, to me, was something rich people did. I thought, what's the point of saving $10 when rent is $800? I moved to the city when I was 21. Naive, hopeful, stubborn. I shared a studio apartment with 2 other girls. We took turns cooking, though it usually meant boiled noodles and frozen vegetables. We kept the lights off most nights to save on electricity. We reused tea bags, and we laughed a lot, because sometimes that's all you have. I got a job at Beanlight Cafe, a cozy little shop tucked between a bookstore and a pharmacy. The manager was a woman named Marla, who wore heavy eyeliner and remembered everyone's coffee order. I worked the morning shift, 6:30 a.m. to 2:00 p.m. minimum wage. No benefits, no security, but it was mine. And on a windy morning in March, I got my very first real paycheck. It was a thin envelope, my name typed across the front. Inside, 2 crisp bills, a handful of tens, and some coins. Altogether, $387.16. It wasn't much, but I had never felt so wealthy. I held that envelope on the bus ride home, not knowing what to do, not knowing that this would be the first test, the first decision, the first fork in the road. When I got off the bus, I walked straight into a small boutique. There, in the display window, was a coat I'd looked at for months. Cream-colored, thick collar, big pockets. It made me feel like I belonged somewhere colder, somewhere richer, somewhere important. I bought it. Then I bought sushi, the expensive kind, and 2 scented candles, and a journal that said Boss Lady in gold letters. When I got home, I had $28 left. I remember placing the coat on the chair, lighting a candle, opening the journal, and writing, "My new life starts today." I felt powerful, grown up, in control, but the power faded fast. 2 days later, my bus pass expired. It cost $35 to renew. I had $28, so I walked to work, an hour each way, in the rain. By the 3rd day, I had blisters. By the 4th, I was late. By the 5th, Marla gave me a warning. I didn't tell anyone, not even Naomi. Naomi was my best friend from high school. She was the one who used a budgeting app before it was cool. She always brought lunch in glass containers. She never ordered dessert unless it was on special. We were opposites, and yet she always made me feel safe. She came to visit that weekend. She noticed the coat immediately. "Is that the one from Bellevue Street?" I nodded, excited. "I finally got it, first paycheck." She smiled gently, but I saw the pause in her eyes. "That's great," she said. "Did you save anything?" I laughed. "Next time. I just wanted to feel good, you know." She nodded again. "Yeah, I get that. But remember, Clara, money can feel like wind. It lifts you up 1 second and leaves you cold the next." I brushed it off. I didn't want advice. I wanted magic. But magic doesn't pay for medicine. And the next week, I got sick. Really sick. Fever, cough, no voice. I had to call in sick for 3 shifts. I didn't get paid for sick days. And suddenly, I couldn't buy groceries. I lived on crackers and borrowed soup from my roommate. I cried quietly one night, sitting on the kitchen floor, wrapped in the coat that was now stained with regret. I had no backup, no plan, no help. And so, finally, I did the one thing I didn't want to do. I texted Naomi, "Can I come over?" She replied in 1 minute, "Of course, bring your truth, not your shame." I arrived at Naomi's apartment just after sunset. Her place was small, but warm. The smell of cinnamon tea always filled the air, as if it had been waiting for me. Books lined her shelves. Postcards were pinned to the fridge, and the living room lights were soft, like they knew how tired I was. She opened the door and didn't say anything at first. She just pulled me into a hug, the kind of hug that doesn't need words, the kind that makes you realize how long you've been pretending to be okay. We sat at her kitchen table. She poured me tea and waited. I looked down at the cup. My fingers trembled. "I made a mess," I whispered. She didn't flinch. I kept going. I got my first paycheck and spent it all. On things. A coat candles, sushi. Now I don't even have money for a bus pass. I've been walking to work. I got sick. I missed shifts. I can't even buy food right now. I feel like I don't know how to live. Naomi took a slow breath, then asked, "Can I tell you something?" I nodded. She reached for her journal, opened to a page filled with scribbles. When I was 19, I blew my student loan on a weekend trip to Vancouver. Hotels, clothes, fancy wine I didn't even like. Came home broke and ashamed. My eyes widened. "You?" She nodded. "We all have a moment when we think money will fix how we feel inside. But it doesn't. It just hides the wound for a while." She stood up, grabbed a notebook, and placed it in front of me. "Let's learn together." That was the night I wrote my first real budget. Not the kind I scribbled on napkins, not the kind I imagined in my head. A real one with Naomi guiding me through every number. We wrote down my income, my fixed expenses, rent bills, my food budget, my just-in-case money, and most importantly, my savings. "Even $5 is a victory," she said. "Why does it feel so scary?" I asked. "Because no one taught us, and because money touches our emotions more than we think." She wasn't wrong. I cried that night, not because I was poor, but because I had finally stopped hiding. From that moment on, something shifted. I didn't become a financial genius overnight. I didn't suddenly love budgeting, but I respected it, like a quiet friend who always tells you the truth, even when you don't want to hear it. I started small. Every paycheck, I set aside 10%, sometimes more if I could. At first, it hurt, like saying no to something delicious when you're hungry. But Naomi gave me a tip. Make your savings about who you want to become, not just what you're avoiding. So I wrote a list, a dream list, nothing fancy. It had things like a new laptop, a short writing course, a trip to a lake house, 1 month of rent saved in advance. Each time I added $20 to savings, I looked at that list and whispered, "You're one step closer." About 3 months later, I had saved $210. Then I saw it. A flyer on the bulletin board at Beanlight Cafe. 6-week creative writing workshop. $200. Find your voice. My hands trembled as I tore off the bottom tab with the contact number. Could I really spend my savings? Naomi said something I'll never forget. If you use your money to grow, it's not spending, it's planting. So I planted. I enrolled in the class. Every Tuesday night, I walked into a quiet room above the community library, where 10 chairs waited in a circle. The teacher was a woman named Elise, soft voice, messy hair, eyes like she saw through excuses. We read poetry, wrote personal essays, shared aloud. The first time I read my piece, my voice cracked, my hands shook, but no one laughed. They nodded, they listened. For the first time I felt heard. Money had bought me a seat in that room, but it was courage that kept me there. Something awakened in me. I started writing again. Old stories, new ideas, letters I'd never send. I didn't care if they were good. They were mine. At the end of the course, Elise pulled me aside. "Your voice is honest," she said. Submit somewhere. You never know. I sent a piece to a small online magazine. 3 weeks later, they published it and paid me $75. I printed the article and taped it on my fridge, not for others to see, for me, so I wouldn't forget who I was becoming. Things didn't magically get easier, but I felt stronger. Money still came and went, but now I welcomed it like a guest, not a god, not a ghost. I created 3 bank envelopes: living, saving, giving. Even if I could only give $1, I gave, because Naomi once said, money flows best when it's shared. One spring morning, I passed a lemonade stand on the corner near my apartment. A boy, no older than 10, stood behind a shaky plastic table. His sign was crooked, letters drawn in green crayon. Lemonade, 50 cents. He looked serious, focused, but sad. I walked over. How's business? He shrugged. Not good. I'm saving for a bike. But no one really stops. I smiled. You stopped me. I bought 2 cups, gave him a $5 bill. His eyes went wide. This is too much. No, I said, it's just right. As I walked away, I remembered what Naomi told me once, after she helped a stranger pay for groceries. Sometimes we don't just give money, we give people back a little hope. Summer came quietly that year, the kind of summer that doesn't shout. It just warms your skin gently and lets time slow down. I had been living with my budget for nearly 9 months. By now, it had stopped feeling like a cage and started feeling like a rhythm, like brushing your teeth, like watering plants. You don't always feel the results immediately, but one day you smile and the flowers have grown. I was still working at Beanlight, still taking the 6:30 shift, but something inside me had changed. I wasn't just making coffee anymore. I was watching people, really watching them. How they paid, how they ordered, how they sighed when they looked at the tip jar. And one thing became clear: everyone has a money story. Some hide it behind smiles, some wear it in tired eyes, but it's there. One afternoon, a woman came in and ordered a latte. She was dressed in a gray suit, sleek ponytail, heels that clicked. But when she opened her wallet, her hands shook. She slid coins onto the counter, one by one, then paused. Wait, I don't have enough. I smiled gently. Don't worry, this one's on us. Her eyes filled with tears. No one's ever said that to me. She sat by the window and cried quietly into her coffee. I didn't know her story, but I knew the feeling. The moment when even $1 feels like the last breath you're allowed to take. After she left, I took $5 from my giving envelope and replaced the cost in the till. That night, I wrote in my journal, today, I used money to soften a sharp day for someone else. And in doing that, I softened something in myself. Around the same time, Naomi gave me a book called Your Wallet and Your Wounds. It wasn't about spreadsheets or numbers. It was about fear, shame, the stories we carry about what we deserve. I read one line over and over again. If you spend money to be someone you are not, you will always feel like you are missing something. It hit me like a stone in still water, because that was me for years. Spending money to look successful, to feel less small, to prove to myself I was worthy of nice things. But nice things can't hold your hand when the rent is due. They can't talk to you kindly when you cry on the floor. Only you can do that. Only you can be kind to your future self. And so I began a new habit. Every Sunday night, I sat with my tea, my 3 envelopes, and a pen. Living, rent, food bills, saving, future Clara, giving, the world. I added a 4th one. I labeled it growth, because Naomi was right. Money shouldn't only protect us, it should also stretch us, help us bloom. Into that envelope, I started putting small amounts, $10, $15, once, even just $3. And I used it for one purpose: learning, online courses, ebooks, workshops, printing my own zines to leave at the library. One Saturday morning, I used $40 from my growth envelope to attend a storytelling class led by a local author. Her name was Marin. She was in her 50s, red glasses, laughed easily, wrote stories that felt like long hugs. During the break, I asked her, "Do you think I could ever write something real? Something people would want to read?" She looked at me, really looked, then said, "You already are. You just haven't given yourself permission to call it real yet." That night, I gave myself that permission. I wrote my name on the cover of a notebook. Not ideas or drafts, just my name. Because this time, it wasn't about someday. It was today. Now, here. And for the first time in years, I felt something new, steady. One day at work, Marla pulled me aside. She looked tired, softer than usual. "I'm stepping back," she said. "The cafe's been good to me, but I want to spend more time with my grandson. Would you be interested in managing the place?" I blinked. "Me?" She nodded. "You're the only one who treats the cafe like a living thing, not just a job." My chest tightened. "But I'm not trained in business." She smiled. "Neither was I, you'll learn." The promotion didn't come with a big raise, but it came with something else: choice. I could adjust the schedule, try new ideas, create a space that felt even more welcoming. I added a shelf of pay-it-forward coffees. If someone was short on money, they could still have a drink. People started leaving notes for the tired nurse, for the kid studying alone, for someone who forgot their wallet but needed warmth. Naomi visited one afternoon. She looked at the changes, the lights, the notes, the tip jars labeled joy and kindness. "You turned money into atmosphere," she whispered. And I smiled, because now I knew money isn't always about more. The cafe started to change slowly, softly, like the seasons. Customers stayed longer, smiled more, left books behind with sticky notes. This one changed me. Teenagers came after school, not to order coffee, but just to sit, to feel okay. We even got a plant, a big leafy one by the window. We called her Deborah. Naomi said every warm place needs a Deborah. And through it all, I kept saving. Not just money, but confidence. It grew in pockets, in small moments. Like the day I helped an elderly man count out $2, and 45 cents in coins for his tea. Or when a teenage girl whispered, "I love your earrings," and I handed them to her because her eyes looked like she hadn't been given anything in weeks. People often think generosity is big, loud, public, but the most powerful giving I've ever seen was quiet. A hand over a table, a dollar in a pocket, a word at the right moment. And money, when used with intention, becomes part of that softness. I remember one Thursday, cold, windy. A boy about 10 years old came in soaking wet, no coat, holding a plastic bag. He looked around nervously and whispered, "Is it okay if I just sit? I won't order anything." He held the bag tighter. I smiled. "Of course. Come sit by Deborah." He nodded, walked slowly to the table, and sat hugging the bag. It was a box of cookies, cracked and uneven, maybe made at home, maybe meant to sell. I brought him a hot chocolate. He looked up, eyes wide. "Really?" "Yes," I said, "no charge." He sipped slowly, carefully. When Naomi came by that night, I told her the story. She said, "Sometimes giving someone a seat is more healing than giving them cash." And she was right. The more I lived this way, this gentle budgeting, this mindful giving, the more I realized money wasn't about control. It was about connection to myself, to my choices, to others. I stopped craving things I used to, not because I became minimalist, but because I started choosing experiences over objects. I saved to take Naomi to a pottery class. We made lopsided bowls and laughed till our cheeks hurt. I saved to help my mom repaint her living room. I bought her a tiny plant named Daisy. She cried. I saved to print my own poetry zine, just 10 copies. I left them at the library, and a week later, one disappeared. A handwritten note appeared in its place. "Thank you. I needed this today." I kept the note in my wallet, more valuable than any cash I'd held. But life, as always, doesn't stay still. Marla sold the cafe. The new owner, Ellis, was younger, efficient, not unkind, just different. He changed the menu, removed the pay-it-forward shelf, took out Deborah. "She's too messy," he said. I felt something twist in my chest. At first, I tried to stay, tried to adapt. But every week, I felt less like myself, like a ghost in a place that used to feel like home. One night, I stayed behind to clean. The cafe was empty, silent, smelling of bleach and change. I stood by the window and whispered, "I don't belong here anymore." I took off my apron, folded it carefully, left it on the counter, and walked away. Naomi picked me up that night. We didn't speak much. She just turned up the car heater and gave me a thermos of tea. "I'm scared," I admitted. "This is the first time I left without a plan." She looked at me, eyes steady. "No, you do have a plan. It's inside you now. You carry it, not just on paper, in your values, in how you move through the world." I stared out the window. What if I fail? Naomi smiled. "You've already succeeded, because you know the difference between spending and investing, between buying and building, between holding money and holding meaning." The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with my envelopes. Living, saving, giving, growth. I opened the growth one, counted the money. $768. I breathed in, out, then wrote 3 words on a blank page. Start something small. The idea came on a Tuesday. Like most good ideas, it didn't arrive loud. It arrived like a whisper, shy, soft, and patient. I was folding laundry, thinking about all the tiny jobs I had done over the years. Barista, cleaner, assistant, blog writer, always someone else's helper, always behind the scenes. And I asked myself, what if I tried being the scene? Not big, not loud, just mine. I opened my notebook, the same one with Naomi's budgeting tips in the front, zine drafts in the middle, and a to-do list titled Someday. I crossed out someday, wrote now, then beneath it, a small writing cafe, part storytelling, part sanctuary. Tea, books, workshops, a place for people who want to begin. I didn't know where to start, so I started small. I asked Naomi, what if I just rented a room once a week, hosted story nights, brought tea, let people write in silence or talk if they wanted to? She didn't blink. She simply said yes. With her help, I found a small space above an art supply store. It had uneven floors, cracked paint, and 2 big windows that made the room glow at sunset. I rented it for Friday nights, $30 each week. I called it the warm table. Our first meeting had 4 people. Naomi, an old man named Martin who used to teach literature, a shy girl named Jessa who never spoke, and me. We sat in a circle. No rules. We wrote, drank tea, lit a candle. That night, I cried when I got home, not because I was overwhelmed, but because for the first time in years, I felt completely, deeply enough. Weeks passed. The warm table grew, sometimes 7 people, sometimes 12. We didn't advertise much. People just brought their friends. They left coins in a jar, no fee, just offering. One evening, a woman named Lou whispered as she left, "This is the only place I feel real." I held that in my heart like gold. One Friday, I looked at the envelope I kept under my pillow, the one I hadn't opened in 3 months. Growth. It had $15. I smiled and whispered, "Let's begin again." I used that money to buy chairs, a kettle, soft blankets, a second-hand projector. I painted the walls with Naomi pale yellow. I borrowed books from the library and stacked them in the corner. The warm table wasn't just a project anymore. It was a living space, a gentle rebellion, a room full of quiet bravery. Then came a letter, handwritten, folded carefully. Inside, "Dear Clara, I found your zine at the library 3 months ago. I read it at 2 a.m. during a panic attack. I just wanted to say thank you. I started saving because of your story. I've put $5 in a jar every week. Today, I bought myself a train ticket to go see my sister. First time in 4 years. Please keep writing. You don't know how far your voice travels. Ava." I wept because sometimes Money teaches you how far love can stretch in paper, in words, in courage. Now, I teach 2 nights a week. One class on budgeting for creatives. One class on healing money wounds through storytelling. I still keep my envelopes. They've moved from paper to digital, but the habit stays. Every time I spend, I ask, does this reflect who I want to become? Will this support someone else's peace? If yes, I give. If no, I wait, because patience is also wealth. Last week, a new girl came to the warm table, 18, nervous. She sat with her coat wrapped around her legs like armor. When I offered her tea, she whispered, "I don't have money." I smiled. "It's not that kind of place." She looked up. "What kind of place is it?" And I answered softly, "It's a place where you don't have to prove your worth to belong." She stayed until the candles burned low. She left a note on the chair. I didn't know it was okay to breathe like this. Sometimes I still walk past Beanlight Cafe. It looks different now. Faster, louder. But that's okay. It's no longer mine. Because now, faster, louder. But that's okay. It's no longer mine. Because now I know the most valuable thing we can build is not a business. It's a space where people feel seen, where they feel safe, where they start to believe again. I don't have a 6-figure bank account. I don't drive a car with heated seats. But I have something I never had before. A relationship with money that is respectful, kind, and human. And that has changed everything. So if you're still listening to this story, if you're sitting alone with numbers that don't add up, or wishes you think are too small, or a voice that says, "You're not good with money," I want you to hear this clearly. You are not broken. You are just beginning. And that's a powerful place to be. Because in the end, money isn't what we hold. It's what we pass on. And I hope someday